choose. Hello, 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 our beautiful, beautiful, beautiful friends. How are you? I hope you are well. I'm here again with Kris. I'm Hadia. HadiaLoving.com is my webpage. I invite you to go on there and sign up for your sessions. I am a spiritual counselor, life coach, fulfillment coach. Been doing this work for over 25 years. I support clients in getting the life that you want. Better and better life, better dating life, better finances, better partnership, better communication with your partners, your coworkers, your careers, places to live, clearing, cleansing, and releasing anything and everything that is no longer serving you through self-loving, self-caring, self-nurturing. And tonight, Kris and I are going to talk about when things get tough and challenging, and when you're having a crisis, if you will, and we'll get more into that later. It's okay to go home. It's okay to rest. It's okay to have downtime. Kris, I want to invite you to introduce yourself and let people know who you are, how to find you, because you're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
It's true, you are.
So I'm Kris. Other than the podcast with Hadia, I am also an artist. If you'd like to check out any of my work, you can find my posted artworks on Instagram at LICH_KEELA.
LICH_KEEA?
KEELA.
KEELA. Yay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And his artwork is amazing. And Kris is
Oh, thank you.
It's true. Yeah, so let's get into it. So most of us know and familiar about midlife crisis. That's been talked about for years. And most people think midlife crisis happens in the middle of your life, like between 40s and 50s. Mm-hmm. And it's usually targeted at men. I'm not sure why, like women don't have midlife crisis.
Maybe they're just not talked about as much, but I'm sure everybody does.
Yeah, but it's like the research I've done is like, when a man has midlife crisis, he gets a sports car and a new young honey kind of thing.
Yep, that's what I've heard as well.
It's not necessarily true, and it doesn't have to be like that.
Yes.
But also, I wish I remembered, there's this doctor who wrote about in every change and stage growth in our lives, most of us have crisis, because we move from like graduating high school into college. A lot of people start having emotional mental breakdown, and it is a crisis, an emotional mental crisis, because it's a huge transition, moving away from home into an environment that's not familiar to you. And then, so we don't just have midlife crisis, we have crisis at different stages and different times in our lives. Like sometimes a person gets in a car accident, which happened to me, and that was in my 30s, and that was a huge crisis for me. I had a crisis graduating high school as well. So it's important to have awareness that you are in crisis, you are in trauma because of transition or because something big happened, even when it's a good thing. Like when people get a promotion or they get a better job, they are in crisis mode because it's a new thing and they feel panicky and depressed, even though it's a good thing. When people get married as well, moving in with somebody, even for people who've been with that person for 10, 20 years, it's different. So anything that changes that's major it's not necessarily for everybody, can put us in crisis. And Kris and I and Kris, you have experienced your own crisis already.
Yes, a few, in fact.
Yeah. Even though you're 26, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And most people have to, and it's not talked about, and it's worth to talk about it, to look into it, and to get support for yourself when you feel you're in crisis. And most people don't think they're in crisis, especially when we're young, because it's not talked about. Mm-hmm. You know,
It's not acknowledged.
exactly. And people go, well, I'm just lazy, or I'm just scared, or I'm just this. No, you're going I'm not saying everybody, but most likely you're going through a crisis, a midlife crisis at that stage that you're at.
Yeah, often
Um,
coined now as the quarter life crisis.
yes, yes, exactly. And you know, sometimes kids go through crisis moving from elementary school to high school, because it's a huge change.
Mhm.
And parents are not aware of it, the children are not aware of it, and that's when the parents are like, oh, you got to go to therapy, or you need a drug, or whatever. And it is important to get support around the transitions in your life, and then to go home and rest. And not everybody has a safe home to go to. Most
Mhm.
people, when they move out, they can't go back to their home of family of origin. And it doesn't have to be your family of origin. The world takes care of you if you allow it to. So the other thing that's important is to have a spiritual practice and to have good friends. So I want to give you room, Kris, to talk about your understanding of the different stages of having crisis, and your own experience, and then we'll talk more about like the different ways. As I said, not everybody has a safe home to go to, and people usually just plow through. So go ahead, Kris.
Yeah, so I think I can think of two very distinct points in my life that felt like critical crises that were very recognizable even in my own um, inexperience and kind of unlived head at that point. One of which was the transition, like you said, from elementary and middle school into high school, which was further tempered by the fact that we moved to a different state. And then the second of which was graduating college and not really knowing what to do after that, and not having the original plans that I had set forth work out. And it's still, like you said, plowing ahead, trying to force it to work and having it really just not pan out the way that I wanted to the point where I thought, well, maybe I should just take a step back and reassess my direction.
You know, moving is a huge corporate to crisis,
Mhm.
especially when you're young and unfamiliar with the territory. I mean, it's hard for adults as well,
Mhm.
but when we're young, we don't have enough tools to be adventurous.
Exactly. You don't have the autonomy or the resources to reestablish yourself as easily, especially because there may be opportunities available to you, but in your inexperience as someone who's younger, you just may not be aware of them or have the confidence or the drive to go seek them out.
And this is my theory and my thinking, and I didn't do research on this. This is just my thinking. I
Mhm.
think this is why alcohol and drugs are so rapid in colleges, because people move away from the comfort of their home and their friends and their environment, and they're in crisis and they're unaware of it, and the world is unaware of it. It's not talked about at universities and colleges. So people start what? Drinking and partying and doing drugs so they can plow through. Like they study hard because they know they need to get their degree, and that's valuable, important. But how are they doing it? By numbing themselves through drugs and alcohol and partying and having sex. And, you know, they have the sex phase of, and they're like, well, I'm just a slut, or I'm just a, you know, a gigolo. And it's like, no, you're just numbing yourself. That's what you're really doing.
Mhm.
You're not being conscious. It's painful to have consciousness when we are in crisis, because we don't know how to deal with it. We don't know how to, we don't have tools for it.
Mhm.
You know, like I said, in midlife crisis, you have permission. All of us have permission to have midlife crisis because it's been talked about for years.
Yeah, it's an established thing.
Exactly. Like, oh, you're in your 40s, 50s. Oh, okay, you're going through midlife
You
crisis.
get a pass.
Exactly. Like people like, oh, it's okay. You know, what do you need? But when we're young, because there's no awareness of it, we're on our own and we don't even know that it's happening to you. You know, most people don't know that they're going through crisis. And so having awareness, learn about this when you feel off and uncomfortable and scared. A lot of people, and I've worked with young people who have gone to universities, left home, and they would totally shut down and couldn't make it. And they will either go back home or go live with friends and other family, a safe place. And then some people go back to junior college, not because they don't have the grades, because it was just too much. They're in crisis and it was too much for them.
Yeah, it's overwhelming to a
Yeah,
certain degree, especially depending on what field you're studying, because you have the whole transition socially and emotionally of leaving your home, going to a foreign place filled with strange people. And on top of that, you also are expected to perform and pay a great price for it.
exactly, exactly. And there's no mental emotional support in universities. I mean, they have the counselors and stuff, but it's not like, even today, it's not invited and it's not talked about. It's like you're here to study, to get a degree so you can get a good job and make good money when you're done.
Yeah, and in my experience, from what I have heard of my friends who have studied in that field of counseling and advisement, and have looked into it while we were still in school, the counselors that are available in most universities are there almost purely to prevent people from becoming so depressed that they commit suicide. They're not there to help you with your everyday problems or your transitionary problems. They're simply a stopgap so that the student can continue going to school. And that's as far as they go.
Yeah, it's like putting on a band-aid on a wound that is bleeding on the
Yeah,
inside.
that's already bleeding.
So you have this internal bleeding, but no one's addressing it. They're
Mhm.
just saying, just keep going. You know, it's like if you're playing a sport and you pull your back or you break something, they're like, let's just bandage it up quickly, get you just enough to continue playing the game.
Mhm.
That's how most things are run as adults in high school, in college, and adulthood. It's like you cannot have midlife crisis. And it's like, but I am.
Yeah.
But most people don't know. So if you're listening to this, have awareness and start thinking back in your life the times where things were very scary and uncomfortable. You were probably having a midlife crisis. And then if you shut down and you just kept pulling through, plowing through to get to the goal, the end goal, instead of addressing what's actually happening. And you picked up drugs, alcohol, sex, food, sleeping, avoiding, like some people either start avoiding everybody in universities and colleges, and they're like head is down, and we call them nerds or a book nerd or whatever, because it's just too terrifying. Or some people become wild and then they just start experimenting with a bunch of different things.
Yeah, and I've seen both extreme cases in my experience in school.
Yeah, and both things are not healthy.
No.
People prize they acknowledge like the nerd, oh, good for you, you're focusing on your school. It's like that person is in trouble. They're
But
meant.
at what cost? What
Exactly.
cost to the self?
Exactly. Exactly. So let's talk about the value of going home. So when you do recognize you're in crisis, and the thing is recognition, like I said, most people don't even know they're in crisis.
Mhm.
When I graduated high school, I went into deep depression, actually before, a month before graduation. I was in bed for a whole month. I could not get out of bed. And I couldn't eat. And I don't know what, just I just collapsed mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And finally, my mom took me to a family doctor, because she took me different doctors, like, well, she's fine. There's nothing, they did all the blood tests and all that. And
Yeah, physiologically, nothing wrong.
exactly. And finally, this doctor saved my life. I was 17 years old. He saved my life, and he doesn't know it. I'd like to reach out to him. He's such a kind man. And one time I ran into him and I thanked him and he didn't know what I was talking about. Because to him, he was doing his job, you know.
Mhm.
He asked my mom to leave the room and he looked at me and he said, "There is nothing physically wrong with you. How are you doing emotionally and mentally? What's
Mm.
going on for you emotionally and mentally?" And it clicked. And I was like, "Oh, nothing." Because I grew up in a family, you don't talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
If you did, that means you're crazy. And a lot of people still live in those dynamics. Like,
Yeah.
you know, only crazy people go to therapy. Um, please get a therapist. And he saved my life because I was like, oh my God, I'm just emotionally taxed. I'm about to graduate and I'm scared. I'm scared of transitioning. And I just decided to get up and go back to school and finish up and graduate with my classmates. So it's, but the first thing is having awareness and giving yourself permission to be okay and to acknowledge, I think I'm in crisis. This looks like an emotional, mental crisis. And sometimes it's also spiritual, and it does affect our bodies. Not everyone is the same. For me,
Mhm.
it affected my body. I just was in bed and I couldn't function at all. So how was your experience with, and did you have awareness, Kris, that you were in crisis? I know you did later, but it took a while, didn't it, for you?
Yes, it was kind of looking back on the whole experience, only then could I truly understand what was going on. Um, at the time, in the moment, I just felt like I was doing what I wanted to at that point because I had worked so hard through all of this and that it was time for me to do what I wanted. But it wasn't really what I wanted. It was what was easy, what was comfortable, what was filled with coping mechanisms, of course. And it was in a way keeping me from from my further goals.
Mhm.
But because I was so burnt out, I just didn't have the energy to transition into that at that point. But given the the timeline of what I had set forth, it was like, okay, this is the next thing. This is the next thing. This is the next thing with no time to rest, really.
Yeah, and it does work out like that. So yeah, it's better. So what I want to acknowledge is the importance of resting and going home.
Mhm.
And as I said earlier, going home is not an option for everybody. For some people it is, but for most of us, it's not. Um, Going back to your family home. Sometimes it's not safe. Sometimes they don't have room or the finances to support you. So for me, going home, it was an option, but it was, and it's usually an option to most of us, but it's not an option that we want to take.
Mhm.
You know, I moved to Los Angeles and I was living in Los Angeles and I was pursuing my career and I was in crisis mode. I wasn't making money. I was homeless, but going home looked like I met this woman. Her name is No Nat. This is in the 90s. She also saved my life. She took me under her wings and I didn't know what was happening. She looked at me and she's like, I know what you're going through. And she invited me to come and live on her couch. And when she moved, she's like, you can stay with me for as long as you need. And when I started working little by slow and making money, like she gave me a safe place that I felt safe enough to start working. She only charged me $200 rent, and she had this beautiful, gorgeous house. And she never asked anything of me. It was never a trade. It was never you cook and clean to stay. She was very kind and very generous. I needed a safe. Going home is finding a safe place in your life to rest. And that's what I needed. She was a safe place for me so I can rest and regroup and look for that. Like God, if you don't believe in God, it's fine. Your universe, your energy, the world cares about us. We are never left abandoned the way we are left abandoned because we abandon ourselves, because we say no to help when it shows up. And a lot of people are loyal to their families and family of origin instead of loyal to themselves. So I invite you to think about this, be loyal to you, and say yes to support when it comes your way, because it does show up. And it's learning to be okay with being broken, to be okay with having crisis, because most of us are not okay. It is uncomfortable and painful to be in pain.
Yeah, especially to face it head on.
Exactly. It's like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. Having pain is so uncomfortable and so painful. It's just like, I know it's a weird thing to say, but it is, and most of us want to avoid it, want to numb out. Either nowadays, like, through gaming, Facebook, social media, Instagram, what, whatever attracts you to avoid your life. So I invite you to have awareness and stop avoiding and be in what is true for you, even if it's painful. Because when I was okay with, I'm like, okay, I can't function right now. This amazing woman, no. I wish, like, when I was growing up, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet, we didn't have email.
Mhm.
So it was challenging staying in touch with people. We lost touch, when I got on my feet and my life was going well. And that happens when we no longer need people. They move on, I think, to be somebody else's angel.
Mm.
Um, but she really, I said yes. I said yes to the invitation of her supporting me. And that also saved my life. Otherwise, I would have been homeless on the streets, or would have had to move back. My mom at the time was living in Vegas. I do not like Vegas. It is not a place that I enjoy. I don't like the weather. I don't like gambling. I would have been miserable, and it would have taken me off track, off of my path,
Mhm.
because I found my spiritual path in Los Angeles. And at the time, I just said yes because I needed like a roof over my head, and she
Mhm.
also fed me. Like, she was so generous, and she never asked for anything. So the our blessings and our angels are out there. We just have to say yes to them. And for some people, can go home to their mother's home or their father's home and rest. And that's also a blessing.
Mhm.
So do you want to share about that for you, Kris, and your experience with going home and the time and the rest that you needed?
Yeah, so after just attempting to push through for probably about 2 years after college, and nothing was really working out. I wasn't getting the job that I wanted, even though I went out on a limb to try and go get it. My relationships were suffering. My coping mechanisms were getting worse. I decided, you know what, I've had enough. I'm just going to go back to the place where my family lives, where my friends are from school, and just exist there for a while. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I can't keep doing this. It's going to be the end of me. And so I did. And for a long time during that experience, it felt much the same,
Mm,
because even though I was resting, there was so much built up pain and unresolved trauma to work through,
yeah.
that was just waiting in the eaves
Mhm.
to be processed. And so all of that came crashing down as soon as I had a chance to breathe. And it took many months to work through all of that and kind of course, physically I was fine, but emotionally speaking, I was broken to eventually heal and get back on my feet and really give a just effort to try something new, like what I'm doing now.
Yeah. And what I love that you shared was it takes time.
It really does.
It takes time, and like every when you slowed down and actually stopped, everything came down crashing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that needs to happen so we can stop. We need and we need to do this throughout our life. You got to stop. You got to stop what you're doing and just be,
Yeah.
and
Pump the
allow,
brakes a little bit.
yeah, and allow yourself to be, so you can reassess your life. Like a lot of people don't get a chance to do this. They go through school, they go through college, they graduate, they get a job, and they're in that job till they retire. So they're most likely just numb. They're unaware of what's happening to them inside of their life and outside. They're just getting along to get along in the world.
Mhm.
So it's important to take that time and to completely stop everything. Previously, I've shared how in my 30s, I decided to get off the train, and I stopped everything and packed a small suitcase and went to Hawaii. And the only person I knew is your mom.
Mhm.
And then I got to meet you and Christina, your sister. Um, and it was the best thing I did for myself. And that was courageous, because I just needed, I graduated from the program that I was in, and I just needed to stop and reassess my life. And I was going through a divorce, and it took a couple of years. It was just hellish. I just needed to regroup and to reconnect with myself, with my spirit, to get to know who I am right now from this point. Because what also happens is we change, but we're
Mhm.
not aware that we have changed. Our personality changes, our desires change, our thoughts, our emotions, the things we liked before, we don't like now. Like a lot of people think if they like this kind of beer, that's it for the rest of their life. But all of us change and grow. And the people that are not aware, they're changing, but they're not aware that they have changed.
Mhm. There's
Uh,
a lack of direction in that
it,
experience.
yeah, and connection to who they really are. So it's important to be aware that you're a different person all the time.
Mhm.
You have different feelings, different thoughts, different desires. And the people that are not aware, they're stuck in this loop of thinking this is who they are. I mean, I don't know if you remember seeing this, like the people that wear the same clothes from 20 years ago, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like those things are out of style. And you probably don't like these clothes, but you haven't caught up that you're a different person.
Yeah.
And it's important to go home, whatever that means for you, going to a friend's house. Wayne Dyer is a spiritual teacher. He's a PhD psychologist, and he writes, he's passed, God bless his soul. And he writes these amazing books. And in one of his talks, he said, God gives us friends to apologize for our family of origin. Because
Mhm.
most people, you don't have, you're not in that situation. Your mom is very loving and supportive, but most people don't have loving and supportive families, and they don't have good relationships with their family of origin. So allow your friends to carry you and take care of you, and they will if we allow them to. You know,
Yeah, and I think I've been sitting on this for a while where with your original story, I wanted to mention the fact that your family that you go home to need not necessarily be your family of origin. It could just be some very close friends. Even though we're phrasing it as going home to your family, family comes in many shapes and forms. And I think if you look inward to yourself, you'll know what the answer is. You'll know who your real family is, whether that's actually your parents and siblings or some people that you've met through a different experience, some close friends. you'll know.
Yeah, there's like our birth family and there's our chosen family.
Mhm.
And our chosen family are friends that we feel family with. Um, and there's our like no Nanette. She was family to me and she took me in for the time that I needed her.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm grateful that I said yes. Like I didn't have any other option. It was that because I chose not to move to Vegas to and my mom, I mean my mom is kind of generous. She moved to Vegas and got a 3-bedroom apartment. She's like, there's a bedroom here for you. I want you to come home. And I'm like, no, thank you. I'm not like Vegas. It wasn't like she said, no, you can't. My mom's always like, as long as I'm alive, you always have a home to come to.
Mhm.
And her saying that created safety inside of me in the world that I can go out and be brave and knowing that I have a safety net. And
Mhm.
that's very generous. But I didn't want to take her up on that because I felt if I did, I would not be living my life. I'll be
Mhm.
living somebody else's life.
You'd be living in the safety net.
Exactly. I needed safety, but not in a place that wasn't supporting my life.
Mhm.
Um, and LA for me was supporting my life and my goals. So find out where you belong in, and the world is huge. And nowadays, well, because of COVID, not really, but it used to be that you can travel easily,
Mhm.
and go if you're called to go somewhere. I've talked to people like, I just woke up one day and Arizona was on my mind. And I went and checked it out. I'm like, oh, I need to move to Arizona. It can be that simple if we're open and receptive to receiving support, and the support comes from the inside, from your inner world, your inner wisdom, inner knowing. All of us have different patterns, different aspects, and different signatures to us. And a part of that is we have wisdom. Everybody is born with wisdom, with knowing, with intuition. It's just learning how to listen to your wisdom and
Mhm.
how to hear the guidance and follow through with the guidance. And that supports you in finding where you're meant to be, either for a few months, few weeks, or the rest of your life. Um, So do you want to share about that from your experience? Because you've been guided to go to other places. You went back home and now you're living um, somewhere else.
Mhm. Well, in this case, they had a very close group of friends where I live now, that had been trying to get me to move here for about a decade. But I, of course, was busy doing other things. And at this juncture, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do next. And yet there were many things that were pointing towards a new experience in this place. I had someone offer to come let me live with them. I had someone offer to get me into a job that I had never experienced before and learn some new skills. Two of my other closest friends from back when I was in college happened to also move down here recently. And it wasn't too far of a move. It's a place that I'm relatively familiar with. So I just thought, a lot of factors are pointing in this direction. I think it's worth a try.
That's wonderful. So you answered the call of support.
Hmm.
Support was showing up for you, and finally you're like, yes, I will do this.
Yes. At the very least, as a stepping stone to the next thing coming out of recovering from all of the past crises and trauma that I experienced in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it takes courage to receive help, by the way,
Hmm.
because most of us learn that you're born alone, you're going to die alone, and unless you're a twin, but most people are born alone. And then you're going to die alone, and then you got to plow through life to get what you want pretty much alone. And it's not true. That's actually a huge lie that we get taught. You're not born
Hmm.
alone. You're born in a womb. Somebody, I mean, your mother's womb. All of us are, you know. So we are born inside of somebody. And then we come into the world with someone holding us. And yes, some people's mother might be alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever, but there's someone who will show up to carry you and take care of you. And there's rare cases that that doesn't happen, but most of us have had people that carried us and loved us and nurtured us as infants and little babies. It might not necessarily be your own mother, but there's somebody there. So one of the first things I would like to encourage all of us is to stop thinking that we are alone. We're not alone. And there is a lot of support and help. We just need to be open to receiving. The people that are successful in the world, the reason they're successful because they're open to receiving support and help. And most people who are successful, they were not born wealthy. They created their own wealth because they received support. And there's home in that, noticing that, oh, okay, like in your case, Kris, your friends became your home as well, your safe haven. And they've been inviting you for a while to come and join them. And that's a great thing. And it's good that you recognize it and you're like, yes. And as for me, like I've had so many transitions. In 1994, LA had a huge earthquake. Buildings collapsed, and I was living in an apartment, and the apartment moved off the foundation 3 centimeters. 3 centimeters is not a lot, but for a building, it's a lot.
Especially the foundation.
Exactly. And I was trapped in my room. Like they had to break the door down when the earthquake was done. It was horrible. Like I was trying to get out of bed because, you know, they tell you to stand in the doorway, and it kept pushing me back. It was very scary. So at that moment, they red tagged our apartment building, and I was homeless and I needed to find a place, and people were so generous. One of my friends, like, you could stay with me, I have 2 guest rooms. And then another friend's like, oh, I know this real estate agent will help you. She helped me find another place, and it was this beautiful condo, and there was a pool, and the bedroom was so big. It had it was, I mean, my apartment was nice. This was much nicer. Had a bathtub jacuzzi in the bedroom, and
Oh goodness.
yeah, washer and dryer, and it was just gorgeous. And I've always wanted like a blue kitchen at the time, back then, not anymore. The kitchen floor was this beautiful small ceramic blue tile. As soon as I walked in, I'm like, oh, this is what I wanted. So support is there. Can you imagine if I was like, no, I don't need help, I'm going to do this on my own? I would not have made it. I would have been homeless because of the earthquake. A lot of people became homeless because of the earthquake. And a lot of people become homeless because we don't know how to say yes to love and support. Like in Los Angeles, I don't know about any other areas and states, there is no reason for anyone to be homeless. There's so many resources for people. There's shelters and homes, and you can rent if you don't have money. Like Santa Monica, it's the city I live in, built you can rent a room, but it's your own space. You get a key and everything, for $60 a month if you're homeless. It's amazing. So, and the differences between a person being homeless and a person not is saying yes to support. And a lot of people are homeless because of mental emotional crisis, and they don't know how to show up in life. And I don't blame them. I've gone through few times in my life with mental emotional crisis, and I didn't know how to function. And I am grateful for the people who showed up to say, let me take care of you, Hadia. Like, because of the car accident, I lost my cognitive thinking. I was in so much pain. I literally forgot how to spell my name. You know, I've been spelling my name for years. and my phone number. And like my coach, Christina, I'd be like, Christina, I have to fill this out. Can you do it? Like I couldn't register anything. So it's important to go home and rest, and also to ask for help. Ask
Yes.
for help. Ask for help, even with the little things. And ask for help with people who understand and have compassion. Because
Mhm.
somebody else would have been like, what are you, stupid? You don't, it says name. Like I couldn't register simple things like that. Write your name. Like what? I don't know. Because I was in so much pain, and that happens with a lot of people.
Mhm.
So notice what you're not capable of. And sometimes we're not capable of anything. We need someone to literally hand hold our hand and help us through everything. I lost the train of thought about this. Do you have anything to say about that for you and your experience, and you know, your friends and awareness? It's okay if you don't.
Yeah, I think I'd have to be grasping at straws here. I did have multiple people reach out to me prior to this experience, but at that time, I don't think I was ready to recognize the state that I was in and that it was okay to accept help from other people. I was still just plowing along, banging my head against the wall, expecting it to break. Um, and that's very painful.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to go through that experience long enough to finally take a breath and recognize this is not working. We should try something else.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think, this is also my opinion, now research. I think humans, we are so resilient. Like we can tolerate huge levels of pain, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, that we keep plowing through, but our life is not working, you
Mhm,
know. And for some people, they end up being homeless. For some people, they start cutting and doing suicidal tendency stuff.
mhm.
Um, like I worked with this young man, he's not young anymore, back years ago, and he was a lawyer, you know, and he was in his 30s, was in this emotional mental crisis and spiritual, excuse me. He tried alcohol, it didn't work, so he went to AA, which was good, and got support, but he was still in crisis mentally, emotionally, couldn't function. Got a job part-time as a barista so he can just pay rent for a roof over his head. And every day he would take his backpack and just go walking on the beach. He lived in Venice, not Venice in Italy, Venice in California, by Santa Monica. Because you know, we have to qualify.
It's true. It's true. It's a big
And
difference.
yeah, and he was guided to just get up early in the morning and walk on the sand, the dry sand, and it got little by slow, like physical movement. He's like, I was walking so slow, it was like molasses, but every day he would just walk for miles. It got him in shape, but he didn't do it for that. He just needed to do something instead of laying in bed and just being a vegetable.
Mhm.
And it little by slow, it got him to function, but it took time to function again, but it took time. So accepting, first thing you got to do is have awareness you're in crisis, emotional, mental, spiritual, sometimes physical, and then accept the state you're at and start asking for help. It's okay to ask for help. Oh, that's the point that I forgot and came back to me, I'm glad. Don't go what I call is a dry well or a dry river. Don't ask for help from people who can't help you and
Mm.
make it worse for you, because we do that as well. We're so resilient and we still want to do it on our own by ourselves, and it's not really accurate. None of us can really live this life alone. We go to people who are not capable of helping us, and on top of it, they make us feel bad about what is going on with us.
And that person could also be yourself.
Exactly.
In the case of just expecting to figure everything out by yourself, and then your own internal dialogue could start lashing out at you. So it's kind of universal in that sense. You have to ask for it where it can be given.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up. We are so mean to ourselves, especially when we're in pain and broken and hurting. The
Mhm.
first thing you got to do, many first things, and one of them is you got to be kind to yourself and have compassion that you're in crisis, that you're broken, that you need help, and then find the resources, people, places, or things that will fill you up, not collude with your negativity and self pain. You know, a lot of people have parents that don't understand. The parent will be like, "What's wrong with you? You know, when I was your age, I just went to college, graduated, got a good job." And it's like, yeah, okay, but that's not who I am.
Mhm.
And I call those parents and those people a dry well, a dry river. If you need water, you got to go to the water source.
Mhm.
You don't go look for water at a dry well because you're not going to get it. And what does that actually mean in physical world reality? You need to go to people who have compassion. They don't need to even understand what you're going through because they don't. We can relate to each other's pain and each other's story. We can relate to each other's joy, but we don't really know exactly what you're going through
Yes.
because your journey is different and it is unique. Like none of us are really special and different, but we are special and different.
Mhm.
You know, just find people who will have understanding and compassion and who are willing to listen
Mhm.
and accept you as you are. And you got to accept yourself as you are where you're at, and quit saying, "Oh, I'm an F up, oh, I'm stupid, oh, I'm no good, oh." No, you're in trouble. You're in emotional, mental, spiritual trouble. And not and usually our friends and family can't handle that level of pain for us.
Mhm.
They're not equipped. And
Yeah,
that's
because in a way you are sharing that pain with someone else when you open up to them and ask for help. And then it's the same, it's kind of the inverse of the dry well analogy where you cannot, when you are overflowing with pain, you can't share that with a like a shallow cup, somebody that could not hold that, because it'll just spill over and they'll be like, I can't. So you need someone with that sort of that depth of emotional compassion.
exactly. And when they say I can't, it's not graceful like that.
Yeah, that's the gist of it, but it doesn't always work out that cleanly.
Exactly. Usually their people can't is they start going, "What's wrong with you? Why
Mhm.
can't you just like show up and get a job? You're too young." But what they're really saying is, "I don't have the training. I don't have the emotional capacity to be here and be in your pain with you." And that's okay. So that's why it's important to find the people and places and things that will support you and nurture you. And there's a lot of resources out there. And the other myth that we learn is, oh, only rich people can get support. It's not true. There's a lot of available free services I'm sure there is in every, especially in the US. I don't know about other countries. I really don't. And if you don't have something in your city, go to another city, you know, and you will be helped.
Go where the water is.
Exactly, exactly. Go where the water that has a waterfall and it keeps flowing all year round. Like I remember when I was living in Hawaii, Kauai, um, hearing this story from the locals that there was this one homeless guy that was on the streets begging. And it was strange for Hawaii because they, at the time, I don't know anymore, there was no homelessness. And finally, like one of the city officials went to him like, "What do you want? What do you need? Why are you homeless?" He goes, "I need a home. I need a job." So they helped him get a home and a job. so that was a resource that was flowing. It was flowing water. It was available for him.
Mhm.
So notice who who can support you and who cannot. And it doesn't mean those people are bad. Like a lot of people be like, oh, my parents don't understand. Well, they don't understand.
Yeah, it's not that they're trying to hurt you, they just don't understand.
Exactly. And they only understand their experience and what they've been through. And most of our parents, they just plowed through life. Nobody, at least, I mean, in your generation is different. My generation, nobody talked about therapy. Nobody talked about life coaches. Nobody
Mhm.
talked about spiritual counseling. You either went to church, to a spiritual church, synagogue, or a mosque, or a temple, whatever.
A place of worship.
Exactly. Or you went to work and you came home, you took care of your family and yourself, and that was it. That's what you did. Anything outside of that was like, what's wrong with you?
Mhm.
um until you got to your 40s and 50s, and it's like, oh, midlife crisis, that's okay. So it is okay to be in crisis at any stage, age that you're at, and it's important to recognize it, and it's important to get support, and it's important to reset time, stop time, go home, find out where home is for you. A home could be in a life partner. A home could be with a group of friends. A home could be moving to the desert and camping for a month, living out of your car. It's nowadays it's a thing. People rebuild their vans, their cars, like the van life. If you need to do that, you do that. You do what it takes to take care of yourself, to nurture yourself, to receive nurturing. Um, and don't go to a dry well.
Don't go where there is no water.
Exactly. You can go to the desert. That could be really healing. And again, what I mean by that is don't go to people who can't support you.
Mhm.
And people love us. Our family loves us. Our friends love us. But it doesn't mean that they're equipped to support us when we are in crisis. A lot of people are not equipped. They don't have the knowledge, the education, the resources to help us get out of our crisis. So you got to find the resources. The water is through the resources that can help you. A counseling center, a shelter, a community. So what are the resources that you recognized, Kris, that was supportive for you to support you while you were going through your when you recognize, oh, and I don't think that like it was clear like that. I don't think it's ever clear like, oh, I'm in crisis, right? It's very foggy. It's like, I don't know what's happening. I can't function.
Yeah, it was more of
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. I need to go somewhere else. And the next best thing was going home. And so fortunately I had a mother that was willing to take me in for a time and let me go back home and live there for a while. I had friends that were nearby that I could spend time with and kind of release all of this emotional tension through just socializing and community with people that I was very close to, had known for a long time, were very compassionate towards me, and that I could trust in that. And then slowly start to look for work opportunities in an area I was very familiar with already. Um, and and eventually just find the strength to move on from that.
Yeah, and that's very smart. And the thing is to look for, because all of us need money. Like when we're in crisis, to look for work that is very simple, very easy.
Hmm.
A lot of people become dishwashers. Do we still have dishwashers at restaurants?
Yep.
Okay, that's still a thing.
Yeah, that's still a thing. I think with the restaurant that I worked at during that time, I was a dishwasher 1 day a week, but we would rotate.
Okay. Um, yeah, it's like I can't deal with people. I can't talk with anyone. So I'm just going to go wash dishes all day
Mhm.
or shred paper for a company.
Mhm.
Actually, people have those job, paper shredding or cleaning or like here at the beach, you become, those people that collect money. I don't
Mhm.
know what that job is called, for parking to park
Oh
at the
yeah.
beach. um, that's like a great job for someone in crisis because you just sit there all day in this booth. People hand you their money, and nowadays they don't even have to hand you money. You're just there to see if they need help to put in their credit card,
Mhm.
right? And you read a book, and you can listen to music. You're on your phone listening to music or watching streaming or whatever.
Mhm.
So find resources again that support your life in that moment, and it's not forever. Nothing is forever.
Mhm.
Slow it down, give yourself permission to not work so hard and not push through. You got to allow yourself the pain so you can get through it, otherwise it just keeps piling up. And when you
Mhm.
do get to your 40s and 50s and you have your midlife crisis, it's too much and you can't handle it. And a lot of people just walk away from a great life that they have
Mhm.
because they're not capable of showing up. That's it. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, they're done.
Yeah.
And there's no need for that if you allow yourself to have a breakdown so you can have a breakthrough. You have a breakdown and you will have a breakthrough to get to the other side, honestly, not pushing and plowing through. And then your life will be okay. You will be okay. How is your experience has been through that, like giving yourself permission to go home, live with your mom, and rest and reset? Are you feeling stronger now? How's the journey been for you, Kris?
Definitely better now, now that I've come out of that. I didn't feel good about it at the time, but I needed to do that to I was thinking of the analogy of if you're driving a car straight towards a wall, you should probably slow down before you try to turn.
Yes.
And so that was kind of my turning point. And so where I am now, I work a job full time or more. I'm living with a friend of mine, but I still pay rent and utilities and for all of my food and stuff like that. So I'm essentially living the way that I was prior to accepting this crisis and taking the time to slow down. And I feel great about it. I started going to the gym again very regularly. I enjoy my job well enough. It's been a long time since I haven't dreaded going to work every day, which is a really nice change. And it feels good to have made this decision. Of course, there were benefits that were pushing me in this direction, but to say, yeah, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna make the best of it.
That's wonderful. And I like that you took your time.
Yeah.
It takes time. And then also, this is what I suggest, and this is not easy. I always tell my clients, make a list before you get there. So, but while you're in crisis, even though it's not easy, make a list of the different things and different resources and the different people that will support you and have compassion for you.
Hmm.
And also be open to see what comes your way. I had a friend, he passed away as well. He was a therapist and he used to go, he did this to be of service. He would go out in the world, and when he would see someone depressed, he'll go sit next to them and say, okay, you got 20 minutes, talk to me, what's going on?
Mm.
And randomly, and he would just meet that person that one time on the street, either at the a bench or the boardwalk, wherever. He went out intentionally seeking people who he perceived needed support, and it was very useful for people. So look for the people that will come into your life to support you on any level, and say
Hmm.
yes. It's an invitation. And that's the thing that most of us don't know, that it's okay to say yes to help. And I know I bring that up a lot because we
Mhm.
don't know. Ask for help and receive it. And don't just ask, receive, and I was a person who didn't know how to ask for help and didn't know how to receive help when it showed up, didn't recognize it, didn't know. And I've learned, and even asking for I wanted to meet this couple at their social media people, because there's a subject like I wanted to talk to them about. And one day I was at Costco and they were right there in front of me. And I didn't know how to walk up to them and say, we're meant to meet because I've been asking for this. I just didn't know how to do it. I felt too shy, too embarrassed. I didn't want to invade their space because they're shopping at Costco. But I'm like, the universe gave me what I needed, what I wanted, and I didn't
Mhm.
follow through. So if you're asking and it shows up, follow through. Say, yes, I'm here. I'm gonna go talk to you. Um, and it's scary. It's not easy.
It's not easy, but a lot of the times it's best to think of like, what's the worst that could possibly happen?
Exactly.
Is it really that bad?
Yeah.
Will you probably forget about it and get over it by at most tomorrow? Yeah, probably. So
That
just go and give it a try. Might as well.
exactly.
You have
Exactly.
almost nothing to lose.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. So I want to cover again, what is going home actually look like in physical world reality? Because most people talk in theory. It's like, oh, go home, go rest. Like, okay, what does that actually mean?
Mhm.
Um, for me, is finding a quiet, safe place to rest. And at different times in my life, different crises, it was with different people. Like the one time I went to Hawaii,
Mhm.
um, that when I was younger in my early 20s, this amazing angel lady, no, her name is No Nanette, um, took me in. Another friend after the the earthquake invited me to stay with them. So it's always different, and it's saying, okay, I will come. I will I will rest. I will take time out. And even like our apartment in the earthquake was red tagged, and we just moved in like 3 months ago. And
Mm.
I had a roommate, and I just bought my bedroom furniture. It was brand new. Everything was brand new, the kitchen. Um, so I had nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And people came together and supported us, me and my roommate, and they furnished our place. They furnished the kitchen. Like everything in my kitchen was gone. I used to collect teapots. I had beautiful ones and like really old ones, and it all just like got destroyed.
Oh,
I know, it broke my heart. And I never collected anything after that. I'm like, what's the point?
yeah. It can all be gone in an instant.
Yeah, exactly. So and it's just amazing. And it wasn't like, and we don't have to work hard to ask for help. Help shows up. It really does. So what would you say, Kris, like concrete things to look for to receive help? And also I suggest make a list. Make a list of the different resources and have them on hand. Make a list of your inner resources, like what can I do to help myself? Because when we're in crisis and we're in emotional, mental challenge and pain and trouble, we forget. We forget that we are smart. We forget that we're strong. We forget who we truly are. Is that your experience as well?
Yes, and I think I haven't had the experience of making a list of resources. Hasn't been something that I've ever thought of, but one thing that I think has helped in that state where your decision-making skills and your perception of the world around you is clouded by your trauma and pain is to just share your experience with other people, because sometimes it just takes a mirror mirror in the sense of another human being who may not necessarily have anything to offer you as far as resources, but they can at least listen to you, and maybe they can point out something very obvious that
Mhm.
you just don't have the clarity to see in that moment. And it's important to share your experience honestly with many people that are compassionate or have the compassion to hear it and understand it. And I'm hoping that you all out there have people like that in your lives that you can talk to, maybe at least one. But it does make a big difference instead of keeping everything inside your own head.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I'm just trying to think of another story in my life because I know when I look back, I've had so much support. Um, yeah, it's just being available to say yes. I think the whole theme of this, inside of going home and finding out what that is for you, what supports you best, and where home is in that time.
Hmm.
And home could be with friends. It could be, I moved to Hawaii, moving to Hawaii. It could, and or moving to another state, or moving to a relative's home, moving to a friend's relative home. Like, people's families are kind as well.
Hmm.
Staying with your friend's mother, or your friend's aunt, or your friend's grandmother.
Or your
That'll
mother's friend.
exactly. Exactly. Your parents' friend or your friend's friend, whatever. Um, because when people hear that someone is challenged, they're like, oh, wow, that I have space, they can come and stay with me.
Hmm.
That happens. Allow yourself the possibilities of support, and don't be stuck like it should look like this. That's another way we rob ourselves from having a good life, is that we have it in our mind that it should look like that. This is though, oh, I should only go live with my family. Like, no, no, your family is whoever you decide is your family. Your friends is whoever you decide are your friends.
And your friends can be your family.
Exactly.
Family to go home to, somebody to support you.
Exactly. And be okay with, I mean, when I say that to people, like, how could you say that? Be okay with being broken. Be okay with your pain.
Hmm.
Because if you're not okay, you're numbing to it. And then you're not going to move forward. And you're not going to live the life, your life. You are going to live your life through pain, through crisis for many, many years. This is why you want to give yourself permission to be in crisis, to be emotionally broken, to be mentally broken, to be physically broken, to be spiritually broken. Because as you break, you're having a breakthrough.
Yeah.
You have
And pain is as much a part of life as joy is. So
exactly.
I feel like we are often fed the misconception that life is going to be great all the time and that everything will just work out. But really, it is a balance between all things, pain included, crisis
Yes.
included. And yes, it hurts, but it's also a necessary part of your own human experience that should be embraced as much as possible, because ultimately you will come out a more complex and stronger person from your experiences, positive or negative.
Yes, it's true. But when we avoided, we're making decision when we avoid our pain, we're making decisions for ourselves and in our life through our pain.
Hmm.
So those decisions are coming out of pain and fear, insecurity, and lack. And this is why it's important to take time to go home, go within, home also inside of yourself,
Hmm.
to rest inside of yourself and on the outside, physically take care of yourself so you can become you again, your energetic, beautiful, fun, joyful self. And then you start making decisions for your life from that place, from who you truly are, not your pain. Like, a lot of people have breakups, right? And they're in breakup mode. What is that called? On the rebound. And then they go into another relationships from the rebound. So
And it's often not very healthy.
exactly, it's
Because
really,
you are using the new relationship as a coping mechanism and bringing all of the unprocessed trauma and baggage from the previous one and laying it in the lap of someone else, as
exactly,
opposed to dealing with it within yourself.
exactly. So the rebound relationships, the rebound jobs, the rebound home, it's not what you really want. And sometimes people get married to that person on the rebound. So they're the rebound marriage, and they're in this marriage for a long time, 5, 6, 10, 20 years. And they're finally like, I never really wanted to be with you. Right. So it's important to take care of yourself. Yes, I agree. It's important to take care of yourself and feel better, and then start making important life decisions.
From a place of clarity and balance.
Yes. So this is a great place to wrap up. In wrap up, be in acceptance, be compassionate, be kind, be loving, and accept yourself when you're in crisis, and receive help, and go home, inside and outside. Go within, and find a safe environment to go through your pain and your crisis. What would you like to say in wrap up, Kris?
I think in my own experience, the most important part of that equation is the acceptance part. And as someone who has notoriously continued just pushing on ahead, to really listen to yourself, listen to your feelings, and even if it has worked in the past that you've been able to push through things by ignoring your own feelings and numbing yourself, it's important to at least acknowledge them. It's kind of like, don't make a try to avoid absolutely binary decision making when it comes to your own life and your own emotions, because no part of that is really binary or simple. You need to take the time to examine the greater picture and then make an informed decision about what to do next, as opposed to just picking the easiest or the hardest option, or continuing the same direction or stopping completely.
Exactly. Thank you, Kris.
Thank you,
You.
Hadia.
Thank you, everybody. And as always, give yourself permission to be you wherever you are. If you're in joy, if you're in pain, be you. It's okay. I love you. Love is given. All of us do love ourselves and each other, and we forget because we got hurt. And most of us got hurt as early as in the womb. Remember who you are. I think I work here, not here, just on the planet. People are like, what are my goals? Who am I? I think our life purpose is to get to know our nature. And every single person is born loving, kind, beautiful, zestful, amazing, beautiful, brilliant, smart, wise, joyous, and free. Remember who you are. I love you. Kris loves you. And we will talk to you later. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.